right?
Welcome back, everyone, for sure. Welcome back, everyone. 2 lines from the bottom of Daf Nun Hey Amud Beis as we learn the second blot of our Motzi Simchas Torah marathon, as we take our commitment to celebrate the Torah to reality and learn Hashem's Torah. We are also learning with the tefillah to the Rebbeinu Shalom that our brethren in Eretz Yisrael, those that of the 2,500 that were wounded, many of them critical, should have a refuah shalema, and hostages that were taken that are in Gaza should be released and get home safely, and we should be able to defend our country and get rid of the terror. People should be able to go to sleep safely and securely, which is going to take quite a while, especially for people that live in Sderot and other bordering places to the Gaza. And the soldiers that are valiantly trying to defend our country should be safe. We have this all in mind when we learn. One of the 48 Kinyonei HaTorah, the way that we acquire Torah, is nosei ba'ol im chaverei, to feel other people's burdens. And we certainly have now over 1 million Yidden that are really, really in danger's way, and we really have to feel their burden and their pain and their worry and their terror. The families that were torn apart, ripped apart, the terrorists going from house to house and mamish killing people. It's really a schreckliche thing to see. I saw a film right after Yom Tov of mamish terrorists going from house to house and mamish shooting families. It's mamish. It's Rebbeinu Shalom should spare us and spare them. I tell over a story that the Ben Ish Chai relates, which is a rather remarkable story. He says there were 2 advisors to a king. One was a guy and one was a Yid. And they ran the kingdom. You know, the Yid was very administratively gifted. The guy was a guy, and he devised larceny against the king, and he sucked the Jew in, and they were caught. So the king said, I really should hang the 2 of you, but I'm a pragmatic person, and I can't run my country without you. But the punishment that you'll have is that your 2 wives just gave birth. I'm confiscating the 2 babies, taking away your children. You'll remember that you can't mess with the crown. And with the screams of the mothers, he confiscated the 2 children. Now, they didn't know what happened to their children, but the king unknowingly raised the children. 10 years passed, and the 2 advisors reformed, and they showed that they were, regretted what they did, and they were loyal to the crown. So the king took out the now 10-year-old boys and said, here, you've shown you regretted your mistake, and you've been loyal to me and good servants, so I'm returning you the boys. But as a final punishment, that you shouldn't forget what you did, I'm not telling you which one is which. And that'll be your punishment. And there were no facial recognitions. They were both brought up as Goyim. So the Jewish advisors said to the king, please, can I try to figure out which one is my child? So the king looked surprised, and he said, okay. So the advisor brought out 2 plates of grapes, one on a cluster and 1 loose grapes, and offered them. And one of the children shot out and unflinchingly, immediately took the plate with the cluster. And the advisor said, that's my son, the Jew. And the king, surprised, said, you're right, but how do you know? He said, we are attached by Esav, it says sheish nefashos, but by the Jews it says shivim nefesh. We're one unit. Kol Yisrael arevim zeh lezeh, and we have an affinity to things that are attached. And our feeling of Kol Yisrael arevim zeh lezeh is tested at times like these. That we have to feel that this, things are not all right in our world right now. We're going to again start the daf with the capital Tilim. Sham alois mimamakim krosicha Adonai Adonai shema v'koili tianos necha kashivais likel tachanunai im avoinais tishma yo Adonai miya'amai Ki imcha slicha leman tivarei Ki visi Adonai kivsa nafshi v'lidvara yoicholti Nafshi l'Adonai mishomim laboiker Shomim laboiker Yachel Yisrael el Adonai Ki im Adonai yachesed V'arbei moifedus V'hu yiftes Yisrael Mikol avoinosav Achenu kol beis Yisrael Hanesunu matzar v'shivya Ha'im d'mei b'yomi b'ei b'yabash Ha'amakim yirachem aleim V'yotziem tzor levacha Me'afei lo Ramishim b'legula Ha'ashtav ha'golav v'zman kariv V'nomar Amen.
In the good stop now, they used to say Bashachas every morning, two for Eretz Yisrael. Every morning.
I know. I know. I was the Rav. Two lines from the bottom of Daf Nun Hey Amid Beis. Thank you, Saba. 2 lines from the bottom of Daf Nun Hey Amid Beis. We Tan Rabbanan. Ein loitkim behema b'mois ma'aser sheni. The din is that you don't buy animals with money of ma'aser sheni. It's obvious why not. If you have money, let's say Saba has money of ma'aser sheni, and he's going to take it up to Yerushalayim. He redeemed his crops. Once he redeems his crops, he can't pass the money on to anything else outside of Yerushalayim. So therefore, he can't buy an animal. That's number one. Number two, if he buys an animal, let's say in Bnei Brak, and then he has to walk the animal to Yerushalayim, it's going to get emaciated. It's going to get worn out, and that's wasting money of Ma'aser Sheni. So therefore, ein loitkin behema b'mois ma'aser sheni. However, let's say he did. Let's say he did buy one. V'im lokach. So if he bought, let's say Saba buys with his money of ma'aser sheni an animal from Shelley. V'im lokach. If he buys from Shelley. So b'shoigeg, if he forgot it was money of ma'aser sheni, so it was an accident, it was unwitting, so then it's a mekach tais. Because Saba doesn't want to have to schlep an animal to Yerushalayim. So im lokach b'shoigeg yachzru damim l'mekayma. So we tell Shelley, you got to return the money to Saba and take back your animal, because it's ridiculous. Saba should have to schlep an animal up to Yerushalayim. B'mezid, but if he knew it was money of ma'aser sheni, and he bought the animal, then tala v'teichel b'makam. Then he has to bring it up to Yerushalayim and eat it there. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, b'amed v'amamurim. That's if it's an erlich yid like Saba. B'mischaven, where he bought it intending to what did you do with money of Ma'aser Sheni? You bought an animal, you brought it as a shlomim in the base of Mikdash, and then you ate the shlomim meat. The Baalim get a portion. You ate Kedushas carbon in the old city. So Bamed Vamamun Mischavein V'lokach Tchila L'Shem Shlomim. But let's say it wasn't Saba. It was a hooligan. Let's say it was Marshall, right? Marshall, he bought it planning to make a tailgate party at the hockey game. That's what he was planning to do. So he was planning to eat Ma'aser Sheni at the hockey game outside of Eretz Yisrael. Aval says the Gemara, Aval b'mischaven l'hoitzi mois Ma'aser Sheni l'chulin. So then we say, no. Shelley gives him back his money and takes back the animal. Bein shoygeg, bein mezid. If it was shoygeg, Marshall doesn't want to take an animal up to Yerushalayim. And if it was mezid, yazur damim l'mekayma. Says the Gemara, wait a second. If it's b'mezid, the kedusha doesn't go off. If Marshall gives money of Ma'aser Sheni to a woman to be mekadesh her, she's mekadeshes. Says Gemara, oh, that's different because the woman knows that money of Ma'aser Sheni, the kedushin doesn't go off, so she's going to take it and use it in Yerushalayim. Amar Abelazi Ishi Yadas She'ei Ma'is Ma'aser Sheni Mischalin L'Nal Yada. The kedusha doesn't go off. But if Marshall is going to do it by the tailgate party, so then Shelley has to give him back the money and take back the animal. Says Gemara, well, wait a second. Maskav lo Rabbi Yirmiyah vari behemoth tameya avodim b'karkos. A horse or slaves or real estate. Now everybody knows that the kedusha of Ma'aser Sheni doesn't go off onto these items because it only goes off onto food, onto things that you could bring for an edible carbon. Vari behemoth tameya avodim v'karkos. The adam yoidea she'ein mois Ma'aser Sheni mischalalan aleim. They know that money of Ma'aser Sheni does not go off, and yet v'tanan ein loikin behemoth tameya avodim v'karkos b'mois Ma'aser Sheni. Marshall, even in Yerushalayim, afilu b'Yerushalayim, Marshall cannot buy with money of Ma'aser Sheni a horse, a donkey, or a real estate, or servants. V'im lakach, and if he did, so what we do is we say that since he took money of Ma'aser Sheni and he bought that which is improper, yoichel kenegdan. So he has to eat an equivalent amount for the money that he gave Shelley. So if let's say he bought the servant for $1,000, he has to eat $1,000 of food in Yerushalayim. So why do we say that the woman who was mikudeshes with the money of Ma'aser Sheni, why don't we say she has to use an equivalent amount? Says the Gemara, no, Elohacha be'isha chaveira askinan. Here we're talking about a pious woman who knows that she has to use that money in Yerushalayim. The Yoda. Amar Mar, im lokach, if Marshall bought a horse, a house, a slave, with money of Ma'aser Sheni, yoichel kenegdan, then he has to eat an equivalent amount. So if he took money of Ma'aser Sheni, $1,000, he has to eat equivalent amount in Yerushalayim. Says, but why? why don't we say that Shelley has to return the money? Like we said, Shelley should return the money and take back the slave, the horse. Why do we say otherwise? Kihasam, like we said earlier, that we say that the money is returned. Amar Shmuel, answers Shmuel, it's talking about Kishabarach, that Shelley fled. Shelley got out. With time of the Barach, but it's only because Shelley fled. Haloi Barach, but if Shelley didn't flee, Kansinan Lamoicher. Now this is very hard. People on this Zoom really have a hard time understanding this. Why would we cancel Shelley and not Marshall? Right? I mean, it's really a pella. I mean, Marshall went ahead, took money of Ma'aseh Sheni, and bought a donkey. I mean, that's a donkey's activity. And why do we cancel Shelley and say he has to take it back? Excuse me. Says the Gemara. Why do we cancel Shelley? We should cancel Marshall. V'nikna say l'lokeach, and say, even without Shelley fleeing, we should say that Marshall should have to eat an equivalent amount. So the Gemara says, well, if there isn't sellers, Marshall would not have a way to do his devious activities. And therefore, lav achbar aganav, it's not the mouse that's the thief, elachur aganav, it's the hole. In other words, when a mouse steals cheese, what's the responsibility? Is it the mouse or the hole that he hides the cheese in? So the Gemara says it's not the mouse, it's not Marshall. Mouse and Marshall, get it? It's not the mouse, it's the hole. The fact that Shelley is available to sell stuff to people that have money of Ma'aseh Sheni, that makes the black market activity available. And therefore we can't send Shelley. So the Gemara says, but I don't understand. If it wouldn't be for the mouse, how would the cheese get in the hole? So if it wouldn't be for crooks like Marshall, who buy donkeys with money of Ma'aseh Sheni, then why are we putting the blame on Shelley? So the Gemara says an interesting rule. What did the hole do? The Gemara says we look where the ill-gotten gain is. Right now, the money of Ma'aseh Sheni that was used illegally is found by Shelley. And therefore, since it's found by Shelley, we throw the book at him, unless he runs away. Mistabra kol heicha di'iki yisura hosam kansina. And now, Rabbi Isai.
Sure. Can I ask something on this?
Yeah.
Well, what about the case where a person buys a behemoth meya? Then why don't we cancel the seller? There we cancel the one who bought it.
Yeah, that's what would that's the case. The reason is because he ran away.
Oh, that's the case where he
yes.
ran away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, new Mishnah, unbelievable, Rabbi Isai. 6 lines from the top on a Motzi Yom Tov marathon. 48 minutes with 2 kapitel Tehillim, with 2 speeches, and we're already a blot and a half in. That's only because we're living righteously. This is the way to live. Right after Yom Tov, 27 Zoomers to come on, that's the way to be. And I didn't welcome over here. We have a lot of Facebook people over here. Abba Steinhauser, Larry Chinsky, Eli Yudel, Alan Oberstein, Shaya Bassman, Yosef Glock, Raman Dweck, and Harrison Kletzel. Welcome to all of you. And we now talk about being Mekadesh and Isha with Isurei Hana. If there's something you're not allowed to benefit from, like Basa v'Chalav, and Marshall gives his date a Big Mac oozing with cheese and hamburger and says, here honey, Hariyat Mekudeshes Li, she's not Mekudeshes. Right? I don't know if you ever saw Marshall with a Frank with mozzarella, right?
No, I wouldn't.
She's not Mekudeshes. So Hamakadesh Ba'orla, if you're Mekadesh a woman with the fruit of a tree in the first 3 years, which is forbidden to benefit from, B'kloya Kerem with the forbidden mixture of a vineyard, B'sharaniskel with an axe that was stoned. The axe was stoned, but before it was stoned, when it received its verdict, they shechted it, and it's also ba'ana, and Marshall is Mekadesh her with that meat. Obegla Rufa with a heifer that is being brought for an unsolved homicide. They broke its neck, and then Marshall was Mekadesh her with its meat. B'tzipurei Metzaira with the bird in the ritual of the purification of the leper. We'll say this is the bird that was slaughtered. We'll talk more about that in the Gemara. B'sar Nazir, or at the hair of a Nazir. I'm telling you, Marshall has a real eclectic idea of Kiddushin. Upeter Chamar, or the firstborn of a donkey, which is supposed to be redeemed with a sheep, or its neck was broken. Or a Basa B'Chalav with a Big Mac with cheese. Or v'chulin shenishkatu ba'azara, or non-sacred stuff that was slaughtered in the temple courtyard, which is also ba'ana. Ain't a mekudesh. She's not mekudesh because Marshall has to give something of his. Since it's also ba'ana, it's not considered lochem. It's not yours. And therefore, and also it doesn't have a value of a pruta, and therefore she's not mekudesh. But machran. If Marshall sold Arla and got money for it, he sold Basa B'Chalav and got money for it, he sold Kloya Kerem and got money for it, V'Kiddush B'Dameim, and he was Mekadesh her with his ill-gotten gains, Mekudeshes. Because the din is that these Isurei Hana do not pass on to the money. It's not Toifes Es Dameha. Says the Gemara, how do we know that all these things are Asabana? But Arla Minalan, how do we know Arla is also the first 3 years? It's not only also to eat it, but it's also to benefit. The Tanya Arelim Lo Yeyachel. The first 3 years you shouldn't eat. Ainli Ala Yisra Achila. I only know that you're not allowed to eat it. Hano Minayin. How do we know you're not allowed to benefit? Shelo Yehena Mimenu. You can't have any benefit. V'lo Yitzraba. You cannot use it as a dye. V'lo Yadlik B'Yasaner. You can't use it as fuel. Talmud Laim of Araltem or Lasa, it repeats it. The rabbi says Kulam, to include even benefit. B'Kloi HaKerem, forbidden mixture of a vineyard. How do you know that you're not allowed to benefit from the forbidden mixture of a vineyard? Minolan. Amachizkia, Amakra, pen tikdash, and we dash in tikdash pen to kadesh. You have to burn it in fire. If you're going to do it lest it becomes sanctified. And what does it mean it becomes sanctified? It has to be burnt with fire. That means you can't even benefit from it. Rav Ashi attempts a different source. Pen tikdash means pen yiyeh kodesh. It should be like kodesh, which is also b'achilo ba'ana. Says more, but that can't be. Because kodesh would pass the isser over to its money. Ima kodesh toifes es damav, it passes the isser over to its money. V'yotze l'chulin, and the original item of goes out l'chulin. Af kloya kerem, then we would say toifes es damav, which it isn't. The isser doesn't pass on to money. V'yotze l'chulin. Ela machvarta k'dechizkia, that the drasha is tukad eish, and not a comparison to hektish. Shoaniskel minayin. Now, what is a shoaniskel? Shoaniskel, simple, is an animal that gores and kills somebody, Rahmanul Itzlan, has to be stoned. So, how do we know? Now, stoned, obviously, if it's stoned, it didn't get shchita, it's going to be asa b'achila. But how do you know that it's asa b'ana? So says the Gemara, Shoaniskel minayin. How do we know that the Shar Niskel is Asr? The Tanya, Mimashma Shenemar Sokol Yisokol Ashar, since it says that you should stone the ox, Eina Yodea Shenavelahi, don't I know that it's not shechted, it's an avela, unavela asura b'achila. Obviously, if you stone it, it's also b'achila. Why does it have to say you shouldn't eat its meat? Obviously, if you stoned it, you didn't do shchita, you're not allowed to eat it. Magidloch, that when it gets its verdict that it has to be stoned, if Marshall is hat the trot and he disobeys the court and he shechts the animal, so he did a shchita, a good shchita, satmer shchita. It's telling you that it's not allowed to be eaten. Magidlach, she'im shachtu la'acher, yamatam lo yachal es b'sar. Why does it have to say you can't eat it? Magidlach, she'im shachtu la'acher she'nigmar dinai. Before they got a chance to stone it, if Marshall shechts it after the verdict, asur b'achila. But how do you know that it can't be mekadosh and isha with it? How do you know that it's asur b'hana? B'hana minayin. Talmud Leimer Baal Ashar Naki. The Baal Ashar, that's Marshall, the owner of the shar, is clean. In other words, he's bare. He gets no benefit. My mashma, Shim ben Zaymer, Adam Shaimer Lechaveri, Yatza Ploini, Naki Menachaisav. He's like stripped of his property. He's emptied of his property. Naki means he's clean. He's clean. Clean as a whistle. He can have no benefit from it. So the Gemara says, well, who says that that's the way to learn? Who says it's talking about where Marshall disobeyed the court, fifed on the court, and slaughtered it instead of stoning it? Maybe Marshall, as a good standing citizen, Dilma, maybe if he shechted it after the verdict, maybe he beat the system and it's shari. But this is telling us if it got stoned, that he can't sell the meat to a guy. And the din is that whenever it says lo ye'achel, if it doesn't say afterwards that you could sell it to a guy or give it to the dog, it's also even bahana. And it's coming to tell us that it's also to benefit from the Shara Niskel after it was stoned. Says the Gemara, it's where it was stoned. The Amar Rabbi Avo, we had this in length in Mesechtes Pesachim. Wherever it says lo ye'achel lo seichel or v'lo seichlu, that you shouldn't eat it, echad isra achilu v'echad isra hana. It implies both that you're not allowed to eat it and you're not allowed to benefit, unless it says, like by nevela, that you could be macher timkurenu le ger le nachri or titnenu le ger. Says Gemara, or give it to a ger toishiv. But says the Gemara that it's both an Isra Achila ve'echad Isra Hana ad sheyifrad lach hakasav, unless it says it's just eating keder shepach lach b'nevela. By nevela it says you can sell it. But otherwise, lo yoichel, lo yoichlu, lo yisoichal means Isra Achila and Isra Hana. And it's coming to tell you that after you stone it, you're not allowed to even sell it to a guy. Says the Gemara, yeah, that's true. If you need to learn the Isser of eating and the Isser of Hana, so then it means both. That's where it has to tell you that it's also to eat. So when it says lo yachal, it means that it's also to eat and also to benefit. Like for example, it doesn't say, but let's say it said by orla lo yachal. So you're teaching you that you're not allowed to eat it and you're not allowed to benefit. But over here it doesn't have to say that you're not allowed to eat it, because since you stoned it, it didn't have shchita. From the fact that you stoned it. So if it's only coming to tell me an Isra Hana, then it should say Lo Yehene. The Yisrael Gedacht L'Isra Hana Dichsiv, so Nichtav Kra Lo Yehene, then it should say don't benefit. So it's not talking about a case where it was already Asa B'Achila. It has to be talking about the case where Marshall, instead of stoning it, shechted it. And it's telling us from Lo Ye'achal that it's Asa both B'Achila and B'Hana. Inami, if so, then Lo Ya'achal es b'sarai lamali. Now, if it was only telling us that you shouldn't benefit, then it should just say Lo Ya'achal. Why does it say es b'sarai? So the Gemara says, Afal gav the shachte ke'ein basar. Even though you made it basar, you made it meat, you shechted it, it's still asr. So we know that it's not talking about when you stoned it. Says the Gemara, well, but maybe, still the Gemara says, but maybe it's asr if Marshall shechts it after the verdict, only if he shechts it with a sharpened rock. So it's like skila. Says the Gemara, he checked a rock that it doesn't have any pegimus, it doesn't have any notches. V'shachadba. There is where it's Asr B'Achila and B'Hana. Why? There it's because the Mirze Keskila, because it looks like skila used a rock. Aval Shchita B'Sakin, but if he shechted it with a knife, lie. So the Gemara says, no, that can't be. When it says Lo Yachal Es B'Sarai, and it is teaching us if he shechted it after the verdict, before he stoned it, Shchita is anything. It's not, we can't assume that it's one way. Shchita is Midei Saken Baraisaksiv. Does it say Shchita, by Shchita a knife? Shchita is any sharp instrument, so you can't make a chilik. And v'oi Tanya, we learned that beferish, by kol sheichtin, you can shecht with anything. Bein b'tzur, with a rock, bein b'schuchas, whether a glass, bein b'kroi mishilkana, a sharpened reed. So therefore, from the fact that it says lo ye'achal, which was not necessary because it already says if you stone it, of course you can't eat it. So therefore it's talking about where Marshall shechted it instead of stoning it. And it says lo ye'achal, and lo ye'achal means both Isra Achila and Isra Hana. But if lo ye'achal means both Isra Achila and Isra Hana, then what do we need Baal Shar Naki for? So then, it doesn't have to tell us that he's clean from the ox and he can't have any benefit, because that we know from Lo Ya'achal. What does he do at Balashar Naki? That comes to tell us that he can't even benefit from the hide. Says the Gemara, Lahanois Oiroi. Because I may think you can't eat the meat. And therefore it says Balashar Naki that he's out of it, he's clean from any benefit, he can't even use the hide. Says the Gemara, but in Bava Kama, which before we know it, we're going to learn in Bava Kama, a whole different, we have ahead of us for the second half of Shas. We are in our second half of Shas. We're coming now to the Bavas. So, says the Gemara, Ulahanoch Tanoi, according to those Tanoim, the Mapkele Hai Balashar Naki, Lechatzi Kaifer Uledmei Veladis, that used Balashar Naki for the din of Chatzi Kaifer. The din is if it's a Shar Amuad that caught 3 times, then we make Marshal pay for the value of the human being. It's called Kaifer, a ransom. I might think if it's the first time a tam, which pays big damages a chatzi nezik, maybe he has to pay chatzi kaifer, half of the value of the man. So Baal Sharnoki comes to tell me that he's exempt from chatzi kaifer. And according to the Mandiyama, that Baal Sharnoki comes to tell us that if the acts cause a woman, Rachmana Islam, to lose her fetus, that the owner is potter from Dmei Vladis for paying for the fetus, or the Dmei Vladis. So then, Hanos Oiroi Minalu, how do we know that Marshall can't benefit from the hide? Says the Gemara, that's what we learned from Es Besarai. It says, Yachal Es Besarai, even Es Hatafel Besarai, even that which is secondary, namely the hide. The Idach, and the other opinion, why doesn't he learn out the hide from Es Besarai? The Idach Es Loi Darish, he doesn't dash an S. Why he doesn't dash an S? We're going to talk about tomorrow. Rabbi say now we will learn two Mishnah Yomis, because we have to make up two Mishnah Yomises. And tomorrow night and this whole week, 8 o'clock, check out YouTube. I'm going to start putting old shiurim on YouTube on Bereshis. They're ready. I put tonight already one shiur from 2 years ago on Bereshis, and there's going to be shiurim from Rabbi Landau's shul when I gave shiur in Rabbi Landau's shul. So stay tuned for that. Remember to say Tillim for Eretz Yisrael and to daven in V'lam Alshinim, we say V'azeidim me'ira sa'aker u'sa'shaber u'sa'mager. So let's have it in mind in V'lam Alshinim, and Sabbath tomorrow morning, and Gedal Sabbath is davening there. Sabbath tomorrow morning, tell them to say after davening 2 kapitel Tillim tomorrow morning.
I have a special thing from
no, don't tell them it's every morning. Just tomorrow morning.
I give them that thing. I have that for me in my house.
Good. Tell them tomorrow morning.
That's what you want it tomorrow morning.
Yeah. While there's active war, for sure, tell them to say the 2 kapitel Tillim, and everybody should have a wonderful night. We're going to do the Mishnah Yomis.
Have a how do you make that? You should only hear good news.